Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency has repeatedly posted error-filled data that inflated its success at saving taxpayer money. But after a series of news reports called out those mistakes, the group changed its tactics. It began making its new mistakes harder to find, leaving its already secretive activities even less transparent than before. Mr. Musk's group posted a new set of claims to its website on March 2, saying it had saved taxpayers $10 billion by terminating 3,489 federal grants. Previously, when it posted new claims, DOGE, Mr. Musk's government restructuring effort, had included identifying details about the cuts it took credit for that allowed the public to fact-check its work by comparing its figures with federal spending databases and talking to the groups whose funding had been cut. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching our video. We truly appreciate your time and support. If you enjoyed this content and found it helpful, we'd love for you to join our community by hitting that subscribe button. It helps us bring you more amazing videos and keeps you updated whenever we post new content. And if you liked what you saw, a quick thumbs up really helps us out and lets us know you want more of this. We'd also love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. We read every single one of them. Thank you again for being a part of our journey. Your support keeps us going, and we can't wait to bring you more awesome content. See you in the next video.
We're talking with the New York Times' David Fahrenthold, who shares a byline on this news story. The headline, "Struggling with Errors, Doge Deletes Billions More from List of Savings." The subheadline reads, "For the second time in a week, Elon Musk's government overhaul effort updated its wall of receipts to remove mistakes that inflated its success." I mean, you and your colleagues have done such incredible reporting on this, showing many of the mistakes and false numbers that this Doge team have posted on their so-called wall of receipts, overstating savings, claiming an $8 billion savings instead of $8 million. Your latest reporting involves contracts Doge was claiming credit for cutting, but some were actually canceled long before Trump's first term even began, as far back as 2005. Can you walk us through some of what you've learned?
Yeah, what we're talking about is what Doge calls its wall of receipts. Basically, it's a list of contracts that it's claiming credit for having cut and the savings it says it achieved by cutting them. It's really the only place where they show their work at all. The only time they ever show us how they get to the numbers they claim for the savings. So you can go down this list and you can see the details of these contracts. And you said in two of the cases, they were counting as canceled two contracts that actually just ended on their own when George W. Bush was president, from 2005 and 2006. And each of those contracts, they claimed a $53 million savings now. So that's the kind of error we're finding. It's not rocket science. You could click literally on a link and see that this was 20 years old.
Now, is that, I mean, if you can find that out, how long did it take you to find that out? Is it a simple mistake on their part, or is it deceptive?
Well, what it is part of a pattern, right? We're looking in these, this is, I said, the one place where you can see Doge show its work. And we're looking in there to see, are they competent? Do they know what they're doing? When they're looking at government contracts, which again, that's the job they're out there to do, is to change the government, to overhaul it, to make it efficient. Do they understand the government itself and how it works? And the errors we're finding them making, I mean, you mentioned some of them, confusing millions with billions, triple counting the same contract, counting contracts as canceled that had actually been canceled long before. Those aren't like difficult things to spot. And it speaks to sort of a carelessness or just a lack of familiarity with the government that they're now basically in charge of.
And has there been any explanation from the White House or Doge as to why they got this stuff so wrong?
The barest of explanations. What they've said is, well, these numbers came from the agencies themselves. Federal agencies sent us these numbers. But again, like Doge is supposed to be in charge here. And the errors they're making seems like they didn't look at these things at all or think about them. You mentioned one earlier where they confused billions with millions. That's not a mistake that anyone should have made, because what they said was that ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, had saved $8 billion by cutting one contract. Well, if you think about that for 1 second, $8 billion is ICE's entire budget. So how could you ever thought they gave their entire budget to one vendor? It's that kind of mistake that seems like they're not really paying attention.
And when after your reporting, it seems like they just remove the errors. They don't really, hold a press conference and say, oh yeah, we made a mistake on this. Here's where we were wrong. This is how we made this mistake.
No, this is the second time now that they've just updated the website to delete most of the largest cuts that they claimed.
These were the biggest cuts that they were claiming turned out to be false or reported multiple times.
Yeah, last week they cut the top 5 cuts they were claiming. Just last night, they cut 5 of the top 7 cuts they were claiming. So these aren't little things with a few dollars. These are billions and billions of dollars that just vanish off their website. And again, with no explanation.
And yet they are claiming to be incredibly transparent at every turn. I mean, they're saying that they are the most transparent.
Yes. So what they've done is they've claimed this really big number. They say now they've saved $105 billion. But only a little bit of that is sort of itemized in detail. That's the part that I've been looking at. About $10 billion is they say, OK, here are the receipts. Here's what we've cut. And again, that's the only place we can really see if they know what they're doing. And when you look at that, you find these huge problems, which then they just delete to the point that the amount of savings they're counting from the contracts being canceled has actually shrunk from 16 billion to 9 billion just in the last couple of weeks.
Is it clear to you how they're making decisions about what to cut? I mean, or do they know what the details of these contracts are, or is it anything that, smells like DEI they cut, or do you know the criteria?
No, there are things in there that are the result of the Trump executive orders against DEI. There's a lot of USAID contracts. In some cases, you can see, yes, these were cuts that were made for political reasons, for other parts of the president's agenda that they're counting as DOGE cuts. But other ones, it seems like agencies sent them in. Hey, here's a really big cut we made that was bogus. It was the savings either didn't exist or they were a lot smaller than the agency claimed. And DOGE seems to have passed that on either without noticing or without trying to notice.
Interesting. David Fahrenthold, just remarkable work. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I want to turn back to President Trump's address to Congress and specifically his special guest.
This is the chainsaw for bureaucracy.
Elon Musk, the man with the chainsaw, is expected to get a lot of attention tonight. A source within the White House tells CNN that the president will highlight Musk as an example of how his administration is already changing Washington. Their sweeping cuts to the federal workforce aren't exactly winning everyone over. According to a CBS News YouGov poll, 86% of Democrats disapprove, while 87% of Republicans approve of agency staff cuts.
God anoints people. He's anointed President Trump. So if Elon Musk wants to cut trillions of dollars out of this budget, and if my family has to tighten our belt and not go on vacation because of it, I'm down with that.
But even among Republicans, there seems to be some disagreement. Here's what a 3-time Trump voter who lost his job at the IRS told CNN.
I think with all large agencies, there's going to be some people who underperform, and I believe there is some fraud, waste, and abuse. But I don't think that they're doing a very good job of finding out exactly what needs to be cut. I think they're just taking like the chainsaw to it.
Joining me now to discuss, podcast host and CNN contributor Kara Swisher. Good morning, Kara. I know you've covered
how you doing?
Elon Musk for a long time. People are going to wonder what he's wearing, where he's sitting. But what do you think is significant about him being at this speech?
Well, because they keep trying to focus on him, which is really interesting. I mean, President Trump is doubling down on that Elon's the answer for him, especially with all this performative stuff around chainsaws and, the world's richest man. And he comes in and takes over cabinet meetings or press conferences. So I don't know, maybe he'll be standing next to him on the podium in that regard. He's very close to Trump, obviously.
What do you think about the way Democrats have been trying to talk about it? I also know there's been like a lot of protests at Tesla factories and things like that. Do you think anything is actually resonating?
It may resonate, and I do think the numbers for Musk are so different than Trump, which is really quite striking. As I've said many times, he's the heat shield for Trump on this stuff, and he's willing to take it. I don't think people overall like this guy. They don't also like the idea of an unfettered billionaire doing what he wants with a chainsaw. It does. I mean, the visuals are really strange. It's like, I'll just cut everyone no matter what they do. And I think that last person you just noted said that. But we'll see. I mean, people, again, he's a heat shield for Donald Trump. And in that regard, it's working.
I remember we've been talking in the past, and you thought that their relationship kind of could expire, that there are two people with big egos used to being in charge. What are you thinking now, though, as you see them?
I don't actually. Musk has done a very good job of being ubiquitous around him and very solicitous of Trump, I think. And I don't know how they encounter each other privately, but I think he's very solicitous. I think it mystifies a lot of people in the Trump world who I've to, and they don't know why he has such an attachment to Musk, but he does. He appears with him all the time. He feels like he's a family member, and I feel like it's like a famous person that walks around with you. I don't really understand it, but I do think that Musk's popularity has declined, and I don't think it's just these protests. The numbers show that. I think the numbers at all his companies are doing it, but again, he doesn't mind taking the heat for Trump for some reason.
Musk, of course, makes big use of X, which used to be Twitter. And I know you're actually in a new CNN original series that follows the creation of Twitter. I want to give people a listen to that.
When people are building products, when people are building features, there's this analogy that I use, which is an engineer comes to you and they're like, I've made the perfect kitten. It doesn't need food, doesn't need water. It will never grow old. It will never die. It is the perfect kitten. And you look at the kitten and you're like, why can this kitten shoot bullets? And they're like, well, that's not what you're supposed to use the kitten for. I told you all the things the kitten was intended to be used for. And I'm like, yes. And someone, whether accidentally or on purpose, is going to shoot a bullet with this kitten.
Karen, can you translate a little bit? I mean,
I'm not sure I can.
Exactly. But it's the idea maybe that Twitter was not as innocuous as it turned out to be. And going into this night where the president is messaging, kind of how do you think about its legacy?
Well, people always think it's so powerful. It isn't that big in general compared to everything else, and it's been declining, obviously, over the years. And Twitter's always sort of underperformed itself. I think the question is he's got this worldwide megaphone that Musk is using, and he amplifies it in his favor too. He's changed the algorithm to favor himself. Yeah. And so in that way it's useful, right? It's useful, and he can do a lot, whatever he wants with it. He can make it into this place where we all look at kitten videos, or we all look at murderous kitten videos, right? Or kittens. And either way, we're staring at the thing. And I think that's why it's useful. It's a propaganda machine in this case that Musk is using, not just here. We have to think of it beyond this country, but around the globe.
The ripple effects of President Trump and Elon Musk's massive cuts to USAID are already being felt by communities in the United States. CNN's Kyung La went to North Carolina to see it firsthand.
My job brings in about 75% of our household income. With 2 small children, one still in daycare, we have a lot of childcare expenses, so not a lot of savings.
Ruth Garfinkel in Durham, North Carolina, is not a federal employee. That didn't stop what happened.
Life changed in January for you.
Yes. I worked for a USAID contractor, and without USAID funding contracts, then there's no job for me.
She's taken out a home equity line of credit on her North Carolina house to now stay afloat. Her family, part of an economic ripple effect of federal cuts, felt acutely in the so-called Research Triangle of North Carolina, where a CNN review shows in the last fiscal year, USAID agreed to pay more than $1 billion to groups based in the state.
Real things are happening. People are losing their jobs now.
Walk with Durham's mayor through the city's downtown, and you quickly learn there are a lot of Ruth Garfinkels here. People who don't work for the federal government, but for the organizations that receive USAID funding.
FHI down the street furloughed how many?
I believe they've furloughed about 200 employees so far.
CNN found more than 300 people laid off or furloughed in the state from USAID-related cuts. But that may be just the tip of the iceberg. The mayor expects local numbers to climb as subcontractors and other businesses report layoffs.
That's loss of income directly to the city.
The city, the county, the state, but most importantly, the families.
People think USAID is cutting funding to other countries.
It's happening right here in my city. When those jobs are gone, that means I have one less resident that could support the small businesses here locally. That's one less resident that can contribute to the tax base right here in Durham.
Making it harder and scarier for some in North Carolina are the trolls celebrating these job losses. One company that announced cuts in North Carolina shared with us emails like this, hate letters sent by mail. And if you dare look on social media, plenty of cheering for the suffering in the state.
These are real businesses here in North Carolina. They support other businesses.
Brianna Clark-Schwelm leads a North Carolina Public Health Alliance.
A lot of people are applying for unemployment right now. A lot of people are also pulling their kids out of childcare. They're also thinking about their mortgages. They're thinking about if they're going to stay in North Carolina, if they can afford to stay living here.
13,124 jobs have been lost or furloughed.
Sadie Healy and her business partner have been tracking the ripple effect of the individual U.S. job losses. Organizations and workers are messaging them directly. Then they use that data and publicly post on their USAID Stop Work website.
Walk me through some of the hardest hit states.
You have Florida, you have North Carolina, you have South Carolina.
In your perspective, especially having the messaging and the phone calls that you're getting, is this very much an American problem?
This is 13,000 Americans that just suddenly lost their job, who didn't have a plan and didn't know this was coming. So maybe they have some savings, but you make cuts and that's going to affect your local economy.
I can chat with somebody kind of.
Healy and her partner Meg McClure forecast that if all active USAID contracts and grants are cut, the group's base just in North Carolina could lose more than $2 billion. But it's already having an impact now.
I'd like them to know that they are harming ordinary people, and it's really short-sighted and frankly cruel.
Elon Musk and his Doge team might be getting a helping hand from AI right now to push the purge even faster of the federal workforce. CNN is new reporting that the team is using artificial intelligence to help make these cost-cutting decisions, but that is also now raising fresh security concerns. CNN's Claire Duffy has us reporting. She's here with us now. Tell us more about what you've learned.
Yeah, Kate, so there have been a number of these reports that DOGE is either using or considering using AI as part of its way of speeding up these cuts to federal programs, federal staff. And so I wanted to talk with AI experts, technology experts about the potential risks here, because of course we know that AI can have efficiency benefits.
Right.
It can process lots of data very quickly, but AI experts also say that there are serious risks here. For example, we know that AI can be biased, and that could affect who is getting hired and fired. There was one report from Wired that said that the DOGE team was looking at using AI to evaluate those responses to the request for 5 bullet points asking what federal employees had done last week. One expert telling me that if there is a very talented federal worker for whom English is not their first language, that email could be ranked lower than other workers who, do speak English fluently. Those kinds of issues we could be seeing here. Experts also said that depending on how it's used, AI could introduce serious security risks to sensitive government data, personnel information. And really the big question here is how much human oversight is there? How many humans are looking at the responses, paying attention to what kinds of data is getting fed into these systems? I spoke with Amanda Renteria. She's CEO of Code for America, which is a nonprofit that works with government agencies to implement new technologies. And she said you can't just train an AI tool in a system that you don't know very well, because government systems are older. Oftentimes you can't just deploy a new technology on it and expect to get the right results. Now I should say that we asked DOGE about this, what systems they're using, how they're using them, and they did not respond.
I was going to say, if you had gotten a response, you have buried the lead, because no one's getting a response to any inquiries into Doge. But what they raised there is really interesting. How AI is great, but you got to know the system you're implementing this in before you can do it. And we know that the Doge team does not. We know that Elon Musk does not. That's what exactly he says. When we make mistakes, we'll correct them, with clearly varying degrees of success in that. Thanks, Claire. Great reporting.
The Social Security Administration could be next for Elon Musk and his Doge chainsaw, and he's rattling many of the nearly 70 million people who depend on those monthly checks.
I mean, the government's one big pyramid scheme, if you ask me.
Yeah, well, you can tell me better than anybody.
Social Security is the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time.
Right, explain that.
Oh, so, people pay into Social Security, and the money goes out of Social Security immediately, but the obligation for Social Security is your entire retirement career.
The agency plans to start by slashing around 17,000 jobs. Former Social Security Chief Martin O'Malley, who we should note is a Democrat, delivered this warning in an interview with CNBC. Ultimately, you're going to see the system collapse and an interruption of benefits. I believe you will see that within the next 30 to 90 days. Ahead of any interruption in benefits, people should start saving now. 7,000 jobs, sorry about that. So first I want to, A, correction, 17,000 jobs. But B, I want to ask about the messenger here. Because having it on Joe Rogan is directly injecting it into the veins of the mainstream sort of reporting system. And is that message going to reach the voters they want it to?
Well,
or do they want it to, actually? Like, is Elon Musk getting ahead?
I think that this is going to be a political problem for this president and the administration because...
Just talking about Social Security,
yes,
or the Musk jumping in?
Both.
Yeah.
Both the message and the messenger.
Yeah.
Because this is the most politically strong argument that Democrats have. It's one thing to talk about the threat of a constitutional crisis or the threat of or the erosion of democracy, as we heard Democrats
more vague.
talk so much about on the campaign trail. But this is your grandmother is not going to be able to access the services that she needs to get her Social Security.
So you guys, does it work for you to say to said grandmother, listen, Social Security is a Ponzi scheme? That's what Elon Musk says.
Yeah, look, there are 3 American values: mom, apple pie, and not messing with Social Security. And it's the kind of thing that, again, when we talk about these abstract issues all the time, people don't really have their heads around. Social Security is one. Now, look, that does not change the immense popularity both Joe Rogan and Elon Musk have with a huge swath of the population. But when you start getting into things that affect people, getting back to our last segment, there are, until people start feeling something at their pocketbook, it's just hard to get their heads
Jackie,
around
what
Social
do you
Security.
make of this messenger and the message? Is this someone who's getting out ahead of the president? Is this someone doing it because they want to plant the seeds and they want to do it within the grassroots?
Well, but the president has said he's not going to cut Social Security. That has been a key promise.
Yeah, more than once. So hold on. I think we actually have some clips of him doing that on the campaign trail.
The spending bill that passed last night aims to cut $2 trillion.
Right.
Can you guarantee that Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security will not be touched?
Yeah, I mean, I have said it so many times, you shouldn't be asking me that question. We're not going to touch it.
And I was wrong. That was actually just 2 weeks ago. So if he goes out and says it, I said it so many times, and then Musk goes out and says, well, actually...
Well, I think so Musk was off camera there, but Musk's proximity to Trump, to that power, is why this is problematic. It is abundantly clear that these two talk all the time. So if you have someone like Elon Musk, maybe he's off message, but he's the proximity he has to power is why what he says on Joe Rogan or anywhere else for that matter matters.
And the wild thing about the entire Doge enterprise of cutting trillions of dollars from the government, you kind of can't do it without touching Social Security.
Exactly.
So
which a lot
a
of fiscal hawks have talked about for a long time.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to bring up in terms of messengers, Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, kind of found out the hard way when they released the Epstein files. And Stephen Miller in the White House actually gave all these binders to right-wing influencers. And then everyone sort of said, what was that? There was nothing in there. And people were angry. Can you bypass the regular system, right, media, et cetera, in the governing phase? It's one thing to do it in the campaigning phase. What's it like doing it now?
That's a really good question, Audie. I guess we will see. They have to keep this channel of communication open with their audience, and they are going to those places. But it isn't the same. People expect results.
Yeah, and also like Andrew Tate coming back to the U.S., there's obviously some voices they want to keep energetic and powerful because of their communities.
Yeah, and particularly the Pam Bondi thing, there's some great reporting from Paula Reed and Hannah Rabinowitz here at CNN just in the last day about the fact that the Justice Department sidelined its career communications people in favor of this sort of influencer-focused approach that's at odds with how the government does its work. You need expertise, and no matter how popular these folks are, they can't run government.